Space the Final Frontier, Above and Beyond, an open-minded channel, presents the following incident report for your entertainment. Incident Report: The Wytheville UFO Incident. Location: Wytheville and Fort Chiswell, Virginia. Primary witnesses: Danny Gordon, Paul Dellinger, and multiple civilian witnesses. Time frame: 1987 to 1988. Case status: unresolved. What if thousands of people saw the same thing and no one could explain it? In the late 1980s, a small Appalachian town became the epicenter of one of the most intense UFO flaps in American history. Silent craft, unconventional shapes, red spheres that appeared and vanished in midair. Journalists became witnesses, skeptics became believers, and an entire community was changed forever. Tonight, we examine the documented reports, first-hand testimony, and official investigations surrounding the Wytheville UFO Flap, one of the most overlooked mass sighting events in U.S. history. This is Space, the Final Frontier, Above and Beyond. Keep an open mind and keep looking up. According to eyewitness testimony, the incident began when Danny Gordon observed a mysterious aerial object hovering over an open field near Fort Chiswell, Virginia. The object was described as silent, nearly motionless, and emitting no visible exhaust or propulsion. The object moved slowly across nearby houses. A red, spherical light appeared. Gordon later stated, "As it was going across the houses, here came a red ball, spherical-looking, that went into whatever it was, the aircraft, and disappeared. It was almost like we were mesmerized." The experience left such a strong impression that Gordon held his own press conference the following day, publicly detailing what he had witnessed. He presented hand-drawn illustrations of the object, attempting to convey its shape and movement. The event drew attention from local and national media outlets, including tabloids such as the National Enquirer. What began as a single sighting quickly escalated into something much larger. Escalation of activity. Interest in unidentified aerial phenomena spread rapidly throughout Wytheville, a small Appalachian town unaccustomed to national attention. Reports of strange lights and unconventional aircraft began to multiply. For Gordon, the mystery became an active pursuit. Along with his wife and their 3-year-old daughter, he began traveling rural roads at night, deliberately watching the sky. Gordon said, "I was certain I could prove something was going on. Unlike most people who watch TV, we were filling the car up with gas and going out into the country." As sightings increased, journalists took notice, including Paul Dellinger, a bureau reporter for the Roanoke Times who had lived in Wytheville since 1966. Initially, Dellinger expected the Fort Chiswell report to be a brief curiosity. Dellinger said, "I thought it would be the beginning and end of it. I didn't realize people were going to start looking up and seeing lights in the sky for weeks afterward." Instead of investigating the sky himself, Dellinger began collecting eyewitness accounts, documenting dozens of reports from residents describing unusual lights, shapes, and movements overhead. While he could not explain the sightings, the sheer number of independent reports convinced him something unusual was occurring. Then it happened. Dellinger experienced a sighting of his own. The journalist becomes witness. In the midst of a tidal wave of reported sightings over Wytheville, even seasoned observers began to question their own skepticism. Among them was Paul Dellinger, a longtime journalist with the Roanoke Times, whose role had been to record others' experiences, not to live them. But that perspective shifted one night in 1988. Returning home late after a long day of interviews and filing notes on the growing UFO reports, Dellinger noticed something unusual at the end of his driveway. What first appeared to be a street lamp, a familiar reassuring glow, suddenly behaved in a way no fixed light should. It didn't flicker. It moved, slowly at first, then directly overhead. Dellinger would later recall. It very slowly passed over. I could see what looked like a rear window of some kind. 3 small shapes, almost like teardrops. This wasn't a distant point of light or a drifting aircraft far above. It appeared close enough to discern structure and detail, albeit without sharp definition. The shapes he described were subtle, faint silhouettes framed by the soft illumination, something he had never before encountered in aviation or known aerospace phenomena. As the object glided down the street, observers in town later described how it gave off a low, continuous hum, a sound unlike a helicopter's blade chop or a small aircraft's engine whine. Residents later insisted that even the night's usual wildlife seemed subdued in its presence. Dellinger watched nearly motionless as the object passed, silent against the backdrop of the night, before it slowly vanished into the darkness, leaving only questions behind. For Dellinger, a man trained to report facts and verify information, this moment marked a turning point. The skeptic became a first-hand witness. Though this was the only UFO sighting he personally experienced, it was enough to reshape his understanding of the events unfolding in Wytheville and add yet another layer of credibility to a story already filled with extraordinary claims from dozens of independent observers. Documentation and analysis. With mounting reports and first-hand experience from both men, Gordon and Dellinger collaborated on a book, published in 1988, titled Don't Look Up: The Real Story Behind the Virginia UFO Sightings. The 208-page book compiled sightings not only from Wytheville, but from across the Commonwealth of Virginia. Thousands of copies were sold. Despite extensive documentation, no definitive explanation was ever reached. Dellinger later stated, "I don't know what people were seeing. But they weren't making it up. They were seeing some kind of physical manifestation in the sky." MUFON involvement. To better understand the phenomenon, investigators consulted Susan Swiatek, Virginia Director for the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON. Susan described the events as a classic UFO flap. A UFO flap is a rapid series of sightings occurring within a short period of time and a confined geographical area, she explained. Susan became involved with MUFON around the same time as the Wytheville events and recalls the period vividly. Susan said, "It was reported locally and throughout Virginia, but it never reached the level of attention it should have." MUFON volunteers analyzed a limited number of Wytheville sightings. The most common classification was indeterminate. One particularly unusual aspect stood out. They noticed a variety of reported craft shapes, Susan noted. People reported a large T-shaped object on multiple occasions. That's extremely unusual. It wasn't just lights. It was structure. Even decades later, MUFON considers the Wytheville reports among the most puzzling in its archives. Cultural impact. Although sightings declined over time, public fascination remained. In 1992, the Wytheville UFO Flap was featured on Unsolved Mysteries, introducing the case to a national audience. For filmmaker Sean Kotz, the episode left a lasting impression. Kotz said, "Once you've had an experience like that, or even been exposed to it, it stays with you." In 2011, Kotz began working on a full-length documentary, spending over 10 years interviewing witnesses, journalists, and experts. Rather than focusing solely on what was in the sky, Kotz focused on how the phenomenon affected people. He said, I can't tell you what was in the sky 35 years ago. However, what I can tell you is what people experienced and how it changed them. With recent U.S. Navy footage and government acknowledgments that unidentified aerial phenomena are real and unexplained, COTS believes the story carries new relevance. Conclusion: thousands of reports, dozens of eyewitnesses, journalists, investigators, and ordinary citizens, all describing the same impossible question. What was in the skies over Wytheville? Experimental aircraft? A natural phenomenon? Or something that has yet to be officially acknowledged? The sightings may have faded, but the mystery remains, unresolved, unclassified, and unanswered. Because when something defies explanation, it doesn't disappear. It waits. And here at Space, the final frontier, above and beyond, we explore those mysteries, not to tell you what to believe, but to present the evidence and let you decide. If you enjoyed this investigation, like, subscribe, and join us next time as we journey further into the unknown. Until then, keep your eyes on the skies, because something is happening above and beyond.